Hi Capricorn, welcome to your July 2019 Astro Update. It's Raina here. And I was just kind of like joking with myself as I was compiling your transits. And the first phrase that came into my head was the War of the Roses. If you remember that movie from the 80s, I believe it was, with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. And you know, I'm not trying to make light of people that are going through difficult divorces and things like that. But let me just say that there is an incredible amount of energy in July in the 7th house of marriage and the 8th house of shared resources. So the 7th house can also be legal matters. So if you're fighting over possessions and the resources that you shared as a couple, as you are now parting ways, then that could be certainly heating up in July. And if it's true, it is what it is. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily bad, because if you're divorcing somebody that you don't get along with, I don't think that's really a bad situation, unless you didn't want the divorce. And chances are, if it's a really nasty divorce, then it probably was a nasty marriage, at least at the end. So it kind of shows you the situation anyway from a realistic angle. But let me just go methodically through the month, because it's more than that. I just wanted to share that with you, because I was kind of joking with myself. Now, this is a very important month for everybody because of the eclipses. You know, we have certain months where there's eclipse action, and in some months, the eclipses are not falling in the same month. Like, for instance, the next pair of eclipses, one is going to fall, the Capricorn solar eclipse is going to be in late December. And then the one in Cancer is going to be in January of 2020. So it's not just a given that they're going to be in the same month. So that makes the month more jam-packed and very much a change agent month. On top of that, we have 2 new moons in 1 month. I can't remember the last time that's happened. I'll be embarrassed if it actually happened within the last year. We have had some, seems like we've had an unusual number of blue moons, which two full moons in 1 month, but not two new moons in 1 month. And then last but not least, Mercury retrograde. So in any case, as the month begins, Mars goes into Leo right on the first day. That's your 8th house of shared resources. This is how my mind started going into the War of the Roses. The 8th house has often been characterized as sex, death, and other people's money. It's a house of transformation. It's Scorpio's house. So there is a great intensity attached to the 8th house. It's a mysterious kind of a place for planets to hang out. And Mars in this house can mean different things to different people. It can be fighting over shared resources, and that could include inheritances. That seems to be a big bone of contention within families, or even, you know, if you're not really related to somebody, but you are connected to them through marriage or something. And like I said, marriages. People sometimes get very ugly, to say the least, when they are dealing with money matters. What I was going to say in regards to this, Capricorn, if you have any kind of issue that is kind of like in this area, it's important for you to understand that right now you have some other very strong, challenging transits in your own sign. You have Pluto there, you have Saturn there, the ruler of Capricorn, and you have the South Node transiting your sign. So you have a lot on your plate as it is. And I feel like with Pluto, with all three of those entities, that we could be talking about a karmic test of sorts, or some kind of a spiritual test to see how much you've evolved. And sometimes something looks very tantalizing and doable. And like, hey, I deserve a piece of the pie. But you might be dragged down into something that you don't need to be dragged down into. Now, obviously, I'm being very vague here because it's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody that the best way to handle it is to just ignore it and just to not deal with it. That might not be the right move to make. But I'm just saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So Mars in the 8th can also be, let me clear my throat here. This could be a sex thing, because Mars is also, in addition to being anger and our drive, it can be our sex drive. And the 8th house is a sexual house. Now, I remember a while ago getting into an online argument. Maybe that's too strong a word, but a debate with somebody about this very matter, about which house represents sex. The 8th house cannot be ignored with sex, but as I have seen it characterized, it's spiritual sex. And that makes perfect sense to me, because the 5th house that Leo rules is considered recreational sex. And the 5th house is about pleasure. So it can be like going to concerts, it can be going to parties, or it can be going to bed. It's also the house of conceiving children, so you do the dot connecting. Obviously, the 5th house has its own place, but the 8th house is the house of the sex that is taken seriously. But Mars is there, and Mars is impatient. So it can, when a planet like Mars is there, either as a transit, or if you have seen your chart and you have Mars in your natal 8th house, you may have a tendency to have a strong sex drive. And other factors would have to kind of go along with, what does this mean? It might not mean much of anything. But the thing about it is that in this particular context, with these transits, Mars in the 8th house can lead somebody into sex prematurely. Because, like I say, Mars is very impatient. And the 8th house, another characterization of the 8th house is intimacy. And so when somebody is trying to merge with another person, this is Scorpio's house, and this is all about merging. You know what I mean? Doing it physically can fool a person into thinking that they've done it spiritually. And I think that I don't have to elaborate on that. I think that you know what I mean. So there's all kinds of stuff that this could represent. But in any case, the very next day on the 2nd, we have the solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Cancer in that 7th house. Now, this is actually very good for things connected to a marriage, a committed partnership. Unless you're planning a wedding, which would make perfect sense too. Because the solar eclipse in the 7th could be about a lot of preparations being made for the big day and, new beginnings. I mean, this could be somebody getting proposed to or plans for two people to move in together. On the 3rd, Venus goes into Cancer, goes into that 7th house as well. Venus is obviously going to be a romantic influence, but it's also connected to money. So Venus rules the 7th. It rules that house, but it also rules the 2nd house under the sign of Taurus. So Venus is always going to have that connotation attached to it. And so in the 7th house, this can be great for people who work for themselves and they have clients, because that could be, cha-ching time. On the 7th, Mercury turns retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo in the 8th house. So some kind of miscommunication. And Mercury can be contracts. Something is not quite right in the 8th house, connected to wills, going into probate perhaps, having to recheck things, miscommunications with maybe even banks, entities that can loan money, because the 8th house can be getting money from others, like a loan. So definitely watch your the contracts. Everybody is supposed to during a Mercury retrograde, to make sure that if they're, some people taking it to the extreme wouldn't even dare do that, sign a contract during a Mercury retrograde. Sometimes you don't have a choice if you have a lawsuit or something, or some kind of a matter like that. And Mercury will be going back into the 7th during this time frame, during the month of July. So there's this could be something with a relationship too, because as I say, the 8th house is more of the intimate, and going back into the 7th is like, is this person really, my soulmate, or, is this a real type of a deep relationship, or am I just thinking in terms of them being, it's just like on paper only. It's just kind of like that marriage where it's putting on a front, if you will. On the 16th, we have the lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Capricorn, and this is in the 1st house. This is one of the reasons, Capricorn, I was saying, whoa, because you've already got all of this other stuff happening with Pluto and Saturn and South Node, and now you have a lunar eclipse in your sign. I mean, this could be like a massive change for you as an individual, and you may be just like totally letting go of something within yourself. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be personal to you. But it's also with the 1st house. I mean, it could be having to do with the physical. And you may be like purging a lot of inner stuff. And by the way, even stuff that we consider toxins or something like that, they might have, who knows, maybe they have an energetic component to it. So that might be connected to that, and you might be trying to cleanse yourself so that you can start anew. You're going to have a solar eclipse the day after Christmas. So, I mean, it's a 6 month. No, well, actually, that's only going to be 5.5 months. So it's really, the way time is just flying. And before you know it, you're going to be having a solar eclipse. And this may be an important window of time for you to make major changes if that seems like a plan for you. And then on the 22nd, we have the sun in Leo in that 8th house, and the 8th house being the house of rebirth as well. So you, with the sun being that center of illumination and life-giving properties, it is like you have your rebirth. It's like you go through that. I don't want to call it, it's like a symbolic death mid-month, and then it's like you come alive again. And again, if you're going through relationship issues, I don't know, it's funny. I don't know if you are simply preparing to spend the rest of your life with somebody, because, early on in the month, Venus is in Cancer. So that's very good for relationships. And then speaking of that, on the 27th, Venus goes into Leo, into that 8th house. And that can really be good for relationships to take it to the next level. So yeah, when I said that thing about the War of the Roses, I mean, I was half joking, but for some people it may be a reality. However, maybe you have somebody else that you are turning towards to give your affections to, and that's why I'm seeing these love types of transits as well. And again, Venus can bring money, and in the 8th house, it could be from shared resources. So whether it's wills or the proceeds from a divorce or getting out that loan that you applied for, who knows. On the 31st, we have Mercury going direct at 23 Cancer. That's in that 7th house, and that means that something is resolved, maybe legally. A contract is now able to be signed because it was reworked, or, whatever was wrong with it is fixed, and now you can move forward. This can, if you had some kind of a miscommunication with somebody at a very deep level, this can create that sense of resolution. And then on the very same day, now this is, like I said, the last day of the month, we have that second new moon at 8 degrees of Leo. So remember, I'm recording this the day before the summer solstice, which is the time when the sun goes into Cancer. And it's a very powerful period. So this is, when I'm recording this is the prelude to the main event, I guess, right? And so new moon in the 8th house is new beginnings with 8th house issues. By the way, the 8th house can be not only shared resources, but it could be the occult. I mean, it could be you may be getting interested in some kind of astrology course, or interest in reading tarot, or other kinds of metaphysical topics. And so it's not just about being a money house or being a sex house. It's also about the mysteries of the universe. And so this is like new directions in that. But also intimacy, including emotional intimacy. This is a water house, since Scorpio rules it. So anyway, Capricorn, I hope that you got something positive from this. Like I said, it's a jam-packed month. If you would like a private reading, like a natal chart interpretation or anything, every reading of mine through July 1st, on the eve of the solar eclipse in Cancer, that's why I dated it until then. All my readings are 17% off with the coupon code FREEDOM in all caps 17. The link to my website is below if you're interested in that reading. But I hope that you have an amazing month, and remember that because your lunar eclipse is in your sign, you probably already have gone through major changes, Capricorn, and this is continuing because of this lunar eclipse. But this is, if you approach these things not with trepidation, but thinking, I can't wait for an upgrade, like a spiritual upgrade, that can be a wonderful attitude, because I think it can totally be that for you. And maybe this is going to be, you receiving a download of sorts that allows you to be illuminated. Okay, that's what I have for you. Take care. Bye.